Okay, welcome to Bible study. This is about the nature of the spiritual war. I believe that not many people are understanding the spiritual war, and this is why I'm doing an introduction to what I believe is the nature of the spiritual war. But I want to give you my understanding based on what I've read, based on my studies. If you're not sure about what I've said, first of all, pray on it. Pray for wisdom, pray for knowledge, pray for discernment, and look at the scriptures for yourself. I'm going to do quite a few podcasts on this because it's important to understand it, and I want you to understand where I'm going to with this, because I'm going to be talking about the spiritual war. That to me is so important to understand the times that we're in right now. So let's first acknowledge that the Bible shows us both flesh and spirit. I want to also add in there symbolism, because part of that for me is in the flesh and in the spirit, and this is why we need to have a really clear understanding about this. However, it's only when we take the time to really study the scriptures that you can discern what is actually happening in the flesh and what is taking place in the spirit. Now, someone yesterday was talking about his battle, and I felt as if I felt led to doing this actually. So I'm hoping that he sees this and acknowledges it as well, to let me know whether or not this helps him. Because this spiritual war that we're talking about, many people are not grasping it. And I must admit, it took me a long time. And I think it's because they don't realise that the Bible reveals these dimensions in ways that go beyond not just the physical. It's symbolism. It's spiritual. What is spiritual? What does that actually mean? These are the things you need to ask. What does being in the spirit actually mean? So take, for example, the Apostle John, he wrote the book of Revelation. Revelation is possibly one of the most complex books in the Bible, not just because of its prophecies, but because it reveals spiritual realities that aren't necessarily immediately obvious. And if you look at the book, the whole book, in fact, with the flesh, with a human perspective, you're not going to see it. In Revelation 1:10, John says, I was in the spirit on the Lord's day, and I heard behind me a loud voice like a trumpet. Here, John isn't telling us what he physically saw. He's describing the spiritual experience from a human perspective. And this is why we have to really dig deeper into the scriptures. So this brings us to the much bigger point, of course, which is the Bible, which constantly shows us, for want of a better word, interplay between the physical and the spiritual. Bearing in mind, please bearing in mind, symbolism. We see this right from the very start when Yah says in Genesis 1:2-6, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. I've seen quite a few different interpretations of this, but it doesn't convince me. You see, I believe, as I said, pray on this, I believe he's speaking about both the spiritual and the physical aspects of our humanity. We're not just flesh, folks. We are spirit as well. And just like Yeshua came to earth being spirit first and then manifesting in the flesh, and that's in John 1:14, we too live this dual reality of being spirit beings in physical bodies. And I know that some people are not going to get this, but this is just the way that I personally see it. I'm going to get John 1:14 on the screen. One moment. John 1:14. It says, and the word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. That's the ESV version. I think it does read slightly differently. Now, when we look at Ephesians 6:12, it again becomes even clearer. It says, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Now, as you can see, reading that again just now, I'm looking at this It says, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood. Our fight isn't against each other as such. It's against the rulers. Who are the rulers? We know who they are. Who are the authorities? We know who they are. Who are the cosmic powers? Who's controlling this darkness? This is what we need to look at when we are talking about this. This may go in 2 podcasts, I hope not. But this verse, in my opinion, makes it real plain. The real battle isn't against other people or what we can see in front of us. It's against the spiritual forces that operate within us from the spirit world. I hope this makes sense. But understanding the spiritual dimension requires more than just reading the words, I'm afraid. It demands that we study, as it says in 2 Timothy 2:15, we must study and show ourselves approved unto the Lord. That's what it says. And reflect. We must do this on a deeper meaning. We can't just read the Bible and that's it. You're not going to get your answers just by reading it, folks. Psalms 139, 13-14 shows us how personal and spiritual this actual connection is. Let me read it. For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Now, folks, before we were born, as I said before, Yah knew us. That's God. Not just our physical form, but our spiritual essence. This spiritual origin connects us directly to our purpose and our role in this ongoing spiritual war that we are facing right now. But even though Yah does have a plan for each and every single one of us, the Bible also says that many are called, but few are chosen. And that's in Matthew 22:14. And this raises to me another question. So, and possibly others too. If Yah knew all of this, why is there so much evil in the world? Well, for me, the answer is simple. God gave us choice. The devil doesn't give us choice. So it is found in the same choice that I've made a connection with the angels who came down from heaven and corrupted the seed of humanity. Genesis 6, 1-4 is really important for you to understand how this gives rise to more evil on this earth. Let me find it and put it in, because I think it's good to get everything in black and white, so to speak. And God saw the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. Now, that could be metaphorical, of course, but also it's in the flesh as we see heaven and earth. We see the dark at night, we see the light during the day. I hope you're with me. I know this is difficult to grasp because I have to look at the words all the time. So, as I said, the angels who fell made the choice to turn away from Yah and to embrace the ways of this world instead of thinking about the next world. That's what I think. And today, many people are doing exactly the same thing. They are choosing the temporary pleasures and the distractions of this world rather than focusing on their purpose and the kingdom to come. It says in the Lord's Prayer, on earth as it is in heaven, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Isaiah 55, 8-9 reminds us, and I love this verse, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. This is why it's essential, folks, that we must not rely on our finite understanding, which is limited. We must recognize that this spiritual war involves forces and choices that go beyond what we see in the flesh. And it's only through prayer and studying the word and seeking the wisdom from our Father, Yah, that we can truly understand the spiritual dynamics. So this is why I want to go into the specifics of how the spiritual war impacts our lives. And we must recognize who we are in Yah, spirit beings made in his image, knitted together both physically and spiritually. I read that out in Psalms 139. And it's because of that we are engaged in a war that requires us to be spiritually equipped and not just physically prepared. We need to be prepared spiritually and physical, folks. That's why when people see things happening in this world, they're missing it because they're not connecting it to the Spirit. And you need to pray. We are made in Yah's image.